are in listen-only mode.
Hello, welcome to the PracticeAdmin ICD-10 webinar, the second in our series, How Do You Know If You're Ready for ICD-10? We're going to give people a moment to join us and then we'll get started. Okay, again, this is Tamara Hyatt with PracticeAdmin. I want to welcome you to the second in this series of the ICD-10 webinar series. Today our topic is How Do You Know If You're Ready for ICD-10? We have Kathy Dyson with Dyson Consulting Services joining us. Kathy, are you there?
I am. Good afternoon. 21 days and counting, Tamara.
That's right. Thank you for joining us. I know we have a lot of questions out there. Kathy is the founder of Dyson Consulting Services, which is dedicated to helping doctors of all types increase their cash flow using innovations in technology and implementing best practices. She has over 30 years of experience in consulting and experience as a biller, coder, front desk office administrator. So again, we really appreciate you, Kathy, joining us and helping us with some of the questions folks have out there. Very quickly, we're going to go over, again, just a quick reminder, what ICD-10 is, what this is all about, and I know you have some excellent checklists to help folks see if they're doing what they need to be doing. So let's get started. All right, Kathy, again, just briefly, I know we've all heard about it, but sometimes we just need a little reminder of why we're doing all this and why we're here now.
Right. Let's talk just a minute, and we're not going to dwell too long on ICD-10 and why we're doing it today, but I do just want to say, if you've heard the statement, ICD-10 changes everything, it does not change everything for our physician practices. What it changes is their diagnosis codes they use. They don't change their clinical procedures. They don't use different CPTs to describe those procedures. They don't diagnose differently, but they do diagnose more specifically. One of the biggest things to remember is that the U.S. is the last country to adopt these codes. And in fact, the next ICD-11 set is already out there.
Mm-hmm.
One of the really frightening statistics you read in all the newspapers when they're telling people that October the 1st is going to be terrible in their doctor's offices, things like that, is that our codes went from 14,000 to over 69,000. Remember that over 25% of the increase in those codes is all about laterality. Left, right, bilateral. Also, there's a lot about ordinality, whether it's the initial, subsequent, or sequela encounter. So if you start to break it down, it's not as overwhelming as you might think. What I like to say about ICD-10 is that it allows us finally to paint a better picture of our patient.
And it's incredible the amount of data and information we're going to get from this and how we can really see some trending and population trending.
That's right.
Now,
There are about 300 to 500 codes that most practices will use. So
right.
it's not like they have to learn the entire code set of 69,000. So I want to be sure that we talk about that today on how we're zeroing in on that. I have a doctor who always says, the reason I have to have higher level codes than everybody else's, Bill Curtis, my patients are sicker. So my challenge to him now is you have all the tools to paint the full picture of how sicker your patients are.
To really validate
so
that. Yeah. Now, I know last time we had a question. I wanted to ask this before I forget. Somebody had asked if the modifiers are changing.
The modifiers do not change. The CPTs don't change. The modifiers don't change. There are modifiers that indicate whether it's left, right, bilateral, upper lid, lower lid, that kind of thing. But those are all the same. That's all tied to the procedure code level. What we're talking about with the ICD-10 code set for physician services is the diagnosis code.
Great. Okay, with that, let's jump into I know you've got a lot of great information for us. And we know a lot of people are sort of struggling with, how do I know if I'm ready? And then we have those people who haven't even started and they're not sure where to start. And so I know you have some checklists for us for people to make sure they're doing the right things.
I do have some checklists for us to see, and then I think if you haven't started yet, there are some quick start steps in here for you to take away and do actionable things immediately after this webinar.
Great.
One of the things that I want to be sure everybody takes away, though, from any webinar or any discussion that I have about ICD-10 is that when you walk away and somebody says, "What did you learn?" Well, first, it's never too late. You got to start sometime, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then the other thing is that you should always, if somebody says, "What's the biggest thing that's changing?" Doctor, if you will just tell me left, right, bilateral, and what, when, and where, we can probably get there with you. So if you just do those things for me, we can probably get there. So I think that's a really important thing for all of us to put in our back pocket. I'm sure today, Tamara, we have a combination of coders and billers and billing companies
Yes.
and practices on the
Yeah.
line. Is that right?
Yes.
So this is really geared specifically to what a practice should be doing to get ready. But it is universal in that all of us play a role of some sort with a practice, and we can apply these skills. So we're going to talk about it in 4 different groups today. We're going to talk about the people, and are they ready? Your tools, and are they ready? Your finances, and are you going to get through this if there are impacts to the finances? And what is your cutover plan? So we're going to talk about it in those 4 groups.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. So let's jump into that, starting with people. Are they
Yeah,
ready?
and people, I have to break it down just a little bit more for people because there is different need for different people. There's something that your front desk needs to know and your medical assistants, but also your billing and coding staff and providers, and they all have a little bit different perspective, and they have a little bit different level of knowledge. So we'll just jump right into providers, Tamara.
Okay. There we go. And I just
All
remind
right, you're going
people
to
that
make these available.
we are recording this PowerPoint, and also this presentation is available. Just send a message to marketing at PracticeAdmin, and you can get a copy of this presentation. Okay, Kathy.
All right. So the first thing we need to do for all of our providers, and that means our doctors as well as our nurse practitioners, our physician assistants, any provider that we have, even if he is not a medical doctor, needs to complete specialized training. And I hate to say this, but you've just got to get your doctors to sit down and watch something.
Mm-hmm.
So in today's world of YouTube, which my grandson delights in telling me about all the time, I found a YouTube video that was put together by Paycom and CMS. It's about 1 hour, and that's that first link that you see there, and it gives our physicians, and you'll see in a minute our billing encoders, just an overview of the guidelines for what ICD-10 is and the big things like laterality, dominance, reporting on external causes, those kind of, it goes over it at that level. So that's a really good foundation. It only takes about an hour of your provider's time. They can do it anywhere from their smartphone, from their computer, and they don't have to schedule it. There's no cost to it. It's free. So let's get everybody there for that, okay? If they haven't done anything, that's a great place to start. The second thing, I think, is that there are lots and lots of information out there based on your specialty. And this late in the game, perhaps rather than spending time in an 8 or 16-hour course on your on overall boot camp kind of ICD-10 stuff, for the provider, I think I would try to target them specifically to their specialty. And by that I mean there are all kinds of YouTubes out there that talk about all the different specialties. I haven't vetted all of them personally, but the ones that I have watched are pretty good. Just check your source before you refer it to them. And then CMS has done a pretty good job with at least 6 of our
Yes.
specialties. And I've put that information up here for you. Those aren't really videos, but they are very helpful talking about the most common diagnoses in each of these areas. I also wanted to say that if you're struggling in these areas and maybe you're an ophthalmologist or you're an allergist or something like that, feel free to reach out to me. I may have some tools that can help you in those specialties as well, okay? But this is a great start for them if they haven't done anything. So we got to get them trained. That's the first thing. Then the second thing we have to do is we have to start working on the of documentation that they're providing you. And you're going to hear this several times today, but you've got to get them to the point there. They're always telling you if it's a paired body part, left, right, bilateral, noses, joints, knees, wrists, elbows, eyes, all ears, all of those have to have that specification. Now, is it one ear that's infected, 2 ears that are infected, or both ears? So that laterality is a huge part of what we're doing here. Ordinality simply tells us that it's whether or not it is the initial time we've seen this particular condition for the patient, the subsequent encounter about this, and this does not apply to all diagnosis codes, but some, and then there is a dominance that has been presented. Let's take a stroke victim as an example. We have to tell if the stroke impacted their dominant or non-dominant side. If they're ambidextrous, it's always indicated as dominant. So there's all these little things we need to add to our medical documentation. What's not on this slide that is just as important as laterality, ordinality, and dominance, and I don't actually know how to let this get out there without it on there, is when, where, and what. One of the biggest things you're going to see, of course, is that we now need to indicate where an incident happened, if there's an accident or an injury, what they were doing, and when it happened. And all of that you'll see in a minute ties into our front desk and our medical assistants as well.
That's a great way to put it.
We're going to have to get them trained, all right? And I've given you an article here, a video here from Medscape. It's free, and I think you can sign up and even get CMEs for your providers, which sometimes motivates them to get going on watching things too, because they need that. Once you get them through some discussion about what they need to put into their documentation, then it's time to start reviewing their medical records and the templates that you have in your EMR and seeing if there are things you can do and that the practice can do to tweak their templates, to tweak their drop downs, to make sure they're always getting that specificity. Many of the EMRs out there today have implemented the SNOMED nomenclature. Therefore, we have already built in, it's going to ask you, is it the upper left quadrant or the lower left quadrant of the abdominal cavity, that kind of thing. So those are going to help if your EMR has done those things. If your EMR has not gone that specific for you, then you're going to have to look at your templates and make sure that at a minimum they're always telling you when, where, what, left, right, bilateral, and if it's the first or subsequent encounters.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, after we get them working on their medical documentation, and medical documentation, as long as I've been doing this, medical documentation has been the bane of every certified coder.
Mm-hmm.
If I could just get my physician to write it down, So once we get them there, we've got to actually start them thinking about ICD-10 coding. What I'm doing for my practices that I do billing and consulting with is we are having each physician do the equivalent of 1 to 2 days of patient visits, dual coding. In other words, they're doing it just like they always have an ICD-9, and then we're having them coded in ICD-10. We're not making them do a full day in a day because dual coding can really slow down the throughput in the practice, but we're asking them to take, if they do 25 patients a day, to take 50 over the course of a week and dual code those. So
Good
about
idea.
2 days worth of visits is what I'm suggesting there.
Sort of practice.
Practice, because then they're going to know they have to know left, right. They know they've got to have a different way to describe asthma than they've used in the past if they start using the actual codes that will drive them to that realization. Once we've done that coding, though, you can't just stop. Somebody's got to look at it and then provide them feedback from it. I have one doctor who called me the other day and said, Kathy, what was my score? And I'm like, well, I'm not scoring you, but we're going to work on this. You did really great on that, But that feedback is very, very important.
Yeah.
And then if there are things they're not getting right, they need to do a few more dual coding patients. And we're running out of time to get this done. I understand that, but I think if you can take a couple of hours on the YouTube stuff, on some videos, some presentations, and get these other things in line that we're about to talk about, you'll be ready to start the dual coding. And, it's crunch time. You may have to put in some extra hours or some weekend hours to do this dual coding at this point. So what our biggest challenge is probably motivational at this point. This has been something that has been on and off again in the industry since we put in 5010.
Right.
So it's something that physicians have not really believed was real. And to my knowledge, and maybe someone else on the panel could speak more to this, but I don't know of any bills in Congress that are going to help us out this time. I don't think there's anything there that's going to save us. We are 21 days literally from implementing this, so
yes, we are.
you can't hope for salvation at the last minute anymore. You got to have a plan.
We got to bite the bullet, yeah.
We do, yeah. So that was our provider checklist, and I think if you go through these steps, your providers will be in a much better place. Now let's look at our billing and coding checklist.
Right.
And honestly, their coding and the billing and coding checklist is not a lot different than the providers. They just have a couple of extra things they need to be doing. If they haven't done any training at this point, pull them out from under their rock, because you got to get them out and know that this is happening. The videos are there for them as well. The other thing, if I'm an office manager, as a billing company manager, I'm assessing my people's skills. I'm not taking it for granted that they've done the training and that they understand it. I'm actually having them complete an assessment test to verify that they have the concepts down. You can develop your own, right, if you want. There are some out there, the Medical Management Institute, the AAPC, a lot of other coding educational classes, sites have tests to assess the skills of your staff. And I would say you're asking your doctors to dual code, but if you've got a biller or coder that doesn't know what they're doing, they're not going to give them the right feedback. They're not going to be able to educate those doctors. And my whole drive for all of my coders is that your primary function is to make the physician a better documenter, right?
Right.
We can do a good job. So I think completing that assessment can be a bit intimidating. If they're certified coders, they already know that their sanctioning or governing body is requiring them to certify their skills, but we're not talking about putting them through a 2.5-hour test at this point. We're talking about a quick 25 or 50 question test that says, do you understand the basics?
Right.
Have you got this down in general, and can you find your answers? Okay. Once you know that your billing and coding people have the skills that they need, then you're going to go to dual coding for them. They're going to take the same visits that the physician did without looking at the physician's ICD-10 codes, and they're going to dual code those visits. They're going to compare that to what the physician came up with, and they're going to have to reconcile differences and determine what's best.
Right.
Now, if you get stuck in that process, if you're not sure what the right code is, that's where you pull in someone like myself or the MMI staff or other folks that can really help you out and say, yes, that's right, or no, it's not. I always think it's important to have a relationship with someone that you can validate your coding decisions with when you have questions.
Great idea. And I know we will have another webinar speaker from MMI, either the 16th or the 23rd, and we have that information on our website.
Yeah. Once they have done their coding and seen how the biller's coding matches up to the physician's, it's time for that biller coder to step in and provide feedback to that physician. And what I try to always coach my coders to do when they're doing feedback, and when I do feedback, is what drives this doctor? Is it the excitement of the specificity of the diagnosis code? Because I do have one older physician. I was terrified about teaching him ICD because he still resists even the EMR, right? But you know what turned out when I introduced him to ICD-10, he was so happy because he wasn't having to dumb down his diagnosis anymore.
Oh, right, wow.
He could get it specific enough to really reflect what he wanted. So he was actually happy about it. So that's for him, it was being specific on diagnosis. For others, it's about how are you going to get paid, doctor? Sometimes it's all about the money. So. You might have to say, if you put an unspecified down, doctor, Medicaid has said they're not going to pay you for unspecified. And in fact, for those of us in Georgia, they have done that.
Yeah, this will also improve reimbursement by having additional codes and a deeper granularity of codes.
Right. I have some doctors who are now able to use 2 diagnoses to describe the same patient, where before they could not, because it would have been a duplicate diagnosis code.
Right.
Now they can say, this is what's wrong with his left eye, and that's what's wrong with his right, And it was a little confusing before if you did that. Then the other thing your billing and coding staff needs to do, and they're going to push back on you a little bit on this, but I think it's very important. They need to identify the top 25 to 50 diagnosis codes they use every day with their physicians.
Right, create your own cheat sheet for your office.
They need to have a cheat sheet. They absolutely do, a little job aid, because when this all hits, productivity is going to decrease for your physicians and your billing and coding staff, so we've got to put some things in place, because we can't really slow down our practices again. We slowed them down for 5010. We slowed them down for EMR, meaningful use 1. We slowed them down for 2. We can't keep slowing our physicians down, so we've got to develop speed tools like a translation. And if you need help with those, of course, I have some examples I can help you with, as I said. There are a lot of them out there, too, though, at CMS. Those links I gave you above right here, they
Yes.
have some specialty references. The specialty organizations, like the American Academy of Ophthalmology or the American Academy of Pediatrics, they all have little specialty cheat sheets that they've developed. They're available to purchase from many of the different agencies as well. What I did with my practices in my billing organization is we went into our PM system, which is PracticeAdmin for many of them, and we ran our top diagnoses report. You know, we
Oh,
did
great idea.
our
Yeah.
diagnosis analysis report. We pulled that sucker into Excel and we
Oh,
sorted it
great.
by the frequency,
Mhm.
and we said, here are the top 50. Now
Mhm.
let's see what we do with them, doctors. It was
Also,
interesting.
yeah.
Very, very interesting what happened, because immediately we began to see that with more specificity, we had more codes, but the
Mhm.
family, the base, didn't change. Yes, otitis media did grow because now everyone has a left, right, or bilateral indicator. But still, once you get in the family, you
Mhm.
know, you're good. What we want to be sure of is that we're avoiding unspecifieds in our job aids, because a lot of our doctors have fallen back through the years on unspecified and it
Right.
hasn't been held
Yes.
against us. We know that Medicaid in Georgia, Humana came out with something recently, and a few of the other insurances have come out with things that said, if it is obvious that it's a paired body part, we're not going to pay you without the body part
Yep.
laterality. So I think that's a real good indicator and an example that you can give our physicians and our billing coding team to move them to the next level. All right, let's talk about our next group of people,
All right.
front desk and medical assistants.
Yep. Here we
I
go.
put them together because they have a different need, but they're very important to you. There is about a 9-minute clip out there that's free on YouTube. I love YouTube, you can tell. It's about 9 minutes, but it's from the AAPC, and it's just a real high-level overview of ICD-10, very high level, but it gets them into the discussion with the rest of the office, which is very important, not to ignore this front desk and medical assistant. Why is that important? Because if we teach our front desk and our medical assistants to take down the right kind of appointment note on why we're having the appointment, and if we teach our medical assistant to write out that chief complaint thoroughly enough, we have given our providers and our billers a head start, a huge head start on how they're going to code the ICD-10. So we need to provide specific examples of actual patients. I know I have a course next week I'm doing with a practice, and we're taking, 7 or 8 of their more complex patients that have been in this week, and we're going through and we're going to provide those and say, now here's where it would have been nice if the front desk could type this in the reason for visit, right?
Mhm.
And for your medical assistant to know the child's been tugging, not tugging at their ears, but tugging at both ears, or tugging at their left ear, or tugging at their right ear. So we want to go ahead and start role playing with our staff,
Great
especially our
idea.
front desk and medical assistants, how to get that specificity out of them. Left, right, where, when, and what happened
Mhm.
when there's an injury or an accident involved.
Great
Okay?
idea. I suspect that there's going to be a challenge in finding time to do that, but I think they need to make time to start practicing and learning.
Lunch and learns. I
Yep.
believe in them very much. You
Mhm.
bring lunch in, people will show up, right? Your
Yeah.
staff will be there if you just feed them. So I believe in breakfast and learn, lunch and learn, dinner and learn.
Yes. That's why I have these webinars at lunch, yeah, so people can get their sandwich and sit down and listen.
That's right. And then again, back to that top 50 diagnosis codes or 25 diagnosis codes. You just want to expose the front desk and the medical staff to that as examples on medical assistants. You don't necessarily want them to start picking codes. That's not the goal. But to understand how specific the codes get so they can get that into their chief complaints. Almost all of the practice management software systems out there have had upgrades to
Yes.
get ready for ICD-10. I know PA's been there for some
Yes.
time now, so it's not really necessary to have a meeting to upgrade on the software there.
We
But
are
some of them are having some big shifts, and so you got to make sure they know about those shifts.
and we do have PracticeAdmin is ICD-10 ready, and it has the crosswalk tool built into the product.
That's right, and that's a huge deal. I do want to do a call out there since you brought that up. Tamara, I was working the other day on building up a cross-reference for one of my doctors and going through what I was going to go sit down with him and coach him on next on ICD-10. And I started using the descriptor field. Hadn't used it in years in ICD in PracticeAdmin. And you guys have really improved the search on that descriptive field. And I actually found I would put in the descriptor under the ICD-10 check mark and then cross-reference it back to 9 because it was, again, so specific. And it helped me to get more familiar with that doctor's codes in ICD-10. The other thing is a lot of your front desk and medical assistants are the ones who get the referrals from your physicians. So if you have 10 physicians that provide you a lot of referrals as a specialist and you're seeing that their information you're getting on why they're referring the patient is not specific enough, you may need to give them a call and start them thinking about the additional ICD-10 training. Your staff is going to have to know enough to recognize there's not enough on that referring document and get the additional information from the referring office. So once you've gone through this with your front desk and your medical assistants, of course you want them to start to use the information. Don't just have the lunch and learn and walk away.
Right.
After the lunch and learn, you got to go back and see, did their descriptions get better on the chief complaints? Pull 3 or 4, of each one and see how they're doing.
Kind of challenge each other.
So there's quite a bit of work. Yeah. And make sure that your coders are checking what the front desk is writing down as the presenting condition and educating them if they see the discrepancies. Again, your coder's job, and if you don't have a certified coder in your practice, seriously consider challenging one of your brightest employees to go for that certification because, one, you need that specificity in your office to get this right. You need that leader and that educator, and a good certified coder is all of those things. They're a leader and an educator for your office. Just a call out to another site that I went to pull this checklist. I've added some things in that are a little bit more my own, but I wanted to give credit to that there, so that's at the bottom.
Great, and I was going to look that up afterwards too because I was curious to take a look at it.
Yeah.
Great.
All right, so that was our people. We got them trained and we got them through some dual coding. And are we really ready now with our tools? Do we have everything we need for October the 1st? Is your EMR upgraded? I unfortunately had somebody call me last week and they thought they were all ready, and I pulled up their EMR and started working on it. Whoa, wait a minute, what's going on here? And they don't have the latest release installed.
Oh my gosh.
Makes them ICD-10 ready. So they're in the middle of an upgrade this week. But everybody needs to check, are you on the right version? And then here's the other thing you need to think about with your EMR, and I think you're doing another webinar on some of this
next week. Yes, in fact, next week we're going to discuss how to know if your EMR is ready or if it's slowing you down.
The question that as a practice administrator or a billing company supervisor for a practice that you need to know is my EMR in a dual code mode or is it an on and off switch? And the reason that's important, you'll see in just a minute as we go through our cutover plan, I've got to know if I can put things in the EMR and ICD-9 and ICD-10 at the same time, or once I throw the switch, am I only allowed to use ICD-10 and there's no going back?
Right.
Or if I go back, does everybody go back with me? Right? So the whole office goes back. So you've got to know about that. Practice management system, same question. As we know, PracticeAdmin lets us do dual coding. That's been a goal of theirs from the very beginning of their ICD-10 plan. And does it have the crosswalk capabilities that you need in it? And are you current? Because there are some that aren't subscription-based or that don't automatically get their updates like PracticeAdmin does. You need to make sure they're on the right release too, because it's a big deal.
Kathy, while we're on that, we have a question from our audience. I thought might be a good chance to answer that since you were just talking about it. One of our customers wants to know which report in PracticeAdmin shows the diagnosis codes, the top 50 diagnosis codes.
I'll pull it up here just a minute, but I think it's diagnosis analysis, primary diagnosis code analysis or something like that. I can look it up for you in just a second when I get to where someone else is talking for a minute. But yeah, there are several diagnosis reports, but that one in PracticeAdmin is the one that I run in Expert Excel. One of the things that a lot of people are saying is that ICD-10 is the end of the super bill and encounter form. And maybe it is for a lot of practices. I've got a practice that's been on EMR since 1996 that we work with continually, and we still have a super bill for them.
Wow.
And the reason we do is they use it more as a tracking tool. And we use it actually in our process too. They send it all the way up to us, even though the EMR sends over the claim into PA for us. We use it because sometimes there are notes on that super bill that help us out, but they use it as a tracking note. And what we're doing is for some of our practices, I still have some that aren't on EMR. They're older docs, and they're just not going to go there. I've made them a little cheat sheet, super bill, and we're loading that into PracticeAdmin. But don't forget, you got to do that work, and you got to get it uploaded before
Yeah,
it's too late,
right.
because ICD-10 will be here.
So you want to get as much done before the end of the month, even by the 15th, as possible.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. Then the reason that can be helpful to you in the initial stages as well is one, it's one less change that you're doing is introducing that paperless concept. You're not starting them off with ICD-10 and going paperless on there's no super bill or encounter form is my crutch anymore. You don't want to do all those changes at once. You want to take it one step at a time. But also, anything you can do right now that will speed up what's going to happen on October the 1st so you can turn the patients around and get the claims out the door is important. And sometimes those most common top 10 diagnoses on that super bill can really speed up that process for everybody. And I have some examples of those if anybody needs them, if they want to give me a call and look at some of the things that we're doing and how we're using the legends to help them get the right codes. So let's talk about tools, about books. The ICD-10 code set itself. We know it's built into our practice management system, or we hope it is by now, and our EMRs. But sometimes there is no replacement for going to the book, looking in the index, following through the excludes, looking at the codes around where I think I should be.
Right.
So I really do encourage everybody, if you don't have at least one ICD-10 book in your office, you should get one.
Yes.
I know that's a little bit of an anachronism in today's electronic world because I live on my Kindle too, and I have ICD-10 on my Kindle, and I have it on my smartphone.
That's funny.
But you know what? That book, I mean, this weekend my sister and I were tagging and marking our ICD-10 book so that we could flip through things quickly, you know, and get there. So I encourage everybody to do that, and you
That's
do
great.
need
They have the
access.
ICD-10 book on a Kindle. I didn't know that.
Oh, you can. It's kind of tiny. They have on smartphone too. Yeah,
Yes.
tiny. So let's talk about GIMS tools.
Yes.
Now, in PracticeAdmin, your GIMS tools are built in for you. You can go to the AAPC website. They have a GIM tool right there. CMS allows you to do the GIMS. I want to encourage you to use the GIMS to get you in the family, in the right code family. But do not use it as the final authority. You must go read the excludes 1, the excludes 2, the do not codes are also codes, which is a big one. Like if you're coding a lot of COPD and things like that, now you have to add a tobacco status, which is not something we thought about all the time. But if you're using your book, it's going to point you right there. I have an allergist, and that's a big thing we had to do with him. And then those job aids that we talk about, very, very important that you have those job aids ready for your specialty to get you through. And again, it's about speed. It's about trying to reduce the amount of time you have to spend in the books on those first few days.
Get your cheat sheet together, put it next to you, and add to it.
That's right. That's right. And, you know, no better tools at our hands than Word and Excel and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
It's not like you have to pay for these if you don't want to. You really want something that's specific to your practice and to what you want right then.
Kathy, I wanted to mention very quickly on the GEMS tools. In our last webinar, which is recorded and available online, we did give it sort of a brief, show some screenshots of PracticeAdmin and what the GEMS tool is and how to use it.
Oh, yeah, I probably should have explained that. It's the general equivalency mapping tool provided by CMS that gets us in the general vicinity from ICD-9 codes to ICD-10 or vice versa. What's nice about the PA implementation is you can actually use it from the descriptor field.
Right.
And so that's really, really helpful. Okay, let's talk about, you know that things are changing. It's going to be crazy. Things are going to get denied. Things are going to get put on hold. You have to have a backup plan on what you're going to do for those large volumes of denials and AR that just starts to stack up. I mean, obviously, if you're a billing company, you already have your best practices in place about working your AR every week, going through those unpaid claims and making sure all your denials are worked daily. You know those best practices, but let's not assume that everybody on this call knows to do those things. And then what you've got to do is know, what am I going to do if I get overwhelmed? And I know PA has some folks that can help you with this. Certainly Dyson Consulting can help you if you get behind. There are lots of people out there who can help you. Just know who your contact point is in case you get over your head and you need somebody to help pull it out. That's the big thing. And then the other thing that, and this is going to seem really silly when we have great practice management systems and clearinghouses today, but I work with the North Carolina Medicaid as well. And they sent out something that I just thought hit the nail on the head, because I have some pediatric practices that are almost probably 75–80% Medicaid, right? And, you know, if they have problems, they run very close to the line. They're not going to meet all these financial objectives we're about to talk about. But if they know how to put a claim in directly to the Medicaid portal, they can get their claims out even if the chain breaks down
Right.
from tier
That's
to
another option. Yeah.
So that's a tool. Know that you've got your log on. Make sure you've gone in and done an ICD-9 claim so that you know how it works and processes, right? And then the thing that's not on here, of course, and I should have put it on here, but it kind of goes with this whole backlog of denials in AR. How are you going to know if you're doing all right? I suggest everybody get their top 10 payers, 5 payers if you
Yes.
don't have a lot of different insurers, and know Blue Cross Blue Shield pays me within 7 to 10 days. Medicaid pays me within 5 to 7 days. My turnaround time on Cigna is 9 days. Whatever it is for you and your company, know what that is. And the reason you're going to need that is so you know if you're getting in trouble or not. If you
Right.
don't know, by payer, and just do your top ones. I'm not saying do every one in the
Hmm.
world, but just your top ones. If you don't know how long it takes to turn those around, then you won't know if you're behind. And I don't mean to exclude CMS from my examples because you need to know how long your MAC is taking to turn around your claims as well for them. So make sure Medicare's on that list if you take Medicare.
Hmm. Quick note I wanted to add here, Kathy, as well, some additional tools. If you go to our ICD-10 resource page, we also have links to payer readiness list from several clearinghouses. So you can also go to those lists to see if your payers are ready.
Excellent point, yeah. I know Trizetta and Navicure both have been testing with the payers and have
Yes.
really good information on that. Yeah. All right, so that's about our tools. So lots of stuff to do there too. This is not without work, is it, guys, to get ready? But we can get there. We can get there.
So now the big
Now,
question.
yeah, what about money? Does this really matter to my financial situation? Some of us were around during the 50-10 transition, which was the very first technology improvement we had to put in place. Guess why? Because we knew ICD-10 was coming eventually. It's really the entire basis of that whole 50-10 transition. And I don't know about you, but I have practices that wouldn't believe that they weren't going to get claims to if they didn't eventually get to the new format. And it caused disruption to cash flows. Sometimes it was something that the practice could have done about it. Sometimes it was things that the clearinghouse chain fell down, right? There's a lot of moving pieces to get a claim from a physician's documentation all the way to the payer and back to you in a check. Somewhere along the line, something is probably going to break. I really, really hope this is all a Y2K kind of thing. You know, we all planned and coded and prepared like crazy. I was a
Right.
development manager at that time. We worked on software like
Hmm.
crazy, making sure it wasn't going to break. And it became a non-event in the world, right?
Well,
Remember, we had this huge
you want to hope
drive.
for the best, but prepare for the worst.
Exactly. But just expect that your cash flow will be impacted. Now,
Hmm.
CMS's recommendation is that you have 3 months of cash reserves ready. Some of my practices are like, okay, no big deal, good, we're there. Others, like, are you kidding? I live payroll to payroll. So, you know, I'm telling you what they recommend. You have to expect that there will be an impact on your cash flow.
Hmm.
From nothing else, the productivity of getting the claims out in a speedy manner as you go through and validate the ICD-10 codes those first few days, there's going to be an impact. One suggestion is to make sure that you have a line of credit available with your financial institution that you can tap for your fixed expenses should you have to due to an impact to your cash flow.
Hmm.
I have a customer who has arranged with his banker. He's talked to him about what's coming with ICD-10 and
Great
that, you know,
idea.
he's doing all the stuff, but it could impact him. Is
Yeah.
he going to be able to help him out if payroll comes up and he turns out short and didn't know it, you know, because the Medicare check didn't hit or whatever when it was supposed to. And so they've agreed, he's worked out with his personal banker, you know, a knowledge base. He's built a partnership there already to understand what's happening so that he can be of assistance if needed. And I think that's an excellent, I thought that's an excellent
Yeah.
idea for those with banking contacts.
Great. Kathy, I'm going to ask one of our support people who happens to be here with me if she has an answer to this question. We had a couple of questions, Stephanie, on the top diagnosis codes. And again, would that report be diagnosis analysis, primary diagnosis? Do you have a suggestion? We can look into that. Yeah, to show those top. Okay, she's going to look into that. Okay, thanks, Kathy. And we'll get back to our customers on that when Stephanie gets back to me.
All right. Okay, so there is a release that came out in July
Hmm.
about CMS trying to give the doctors some assistance, all right, on the transition to IC10 and trying not to penalize them.
Hmm.
And I'm not an expert in reading CMS legalese, which that AMA CMS joint announcement thing sounded a lot like.
Yeah.
But what I think it says, okay,
Yes.
is
Translation.
is yeah, what I think it says is that if you have a code that appears to be legitimate, it's going to pass our edits. We're not going to reject it on the front end because of it. But should there be an appeal, should there be a need, should there be a RAC audit question, should there be an audit conducted, then you will need to be more specific. Okay, that's what it says. So it says we're not going to do it on the front end edits so much, but that we will be looking at it and trying to give you leeway in the first year when we do the RAC audit or we do those kind of things. That's what I think it says.
Yeah.
My whole point is don't rely on the CMS deciding they can give you leniency, because that only goes so far.
Right.
Right. Eventually we'll come back and they will make you get it right. So try to handle it up front. And then something we tend to forget is that today's world, most of our revenue, well, let's talk about 3 years ago, 5 years ago, probably 80% of our revenue came from insurance, right?
Right.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
It's somewhere around 50%, 45 to 50%, I think it's what I saw MGMA publish a few days ago, comes from our patient collections.
Mm-hmm.
So now is the time to review, when you're doing that front desk training, is to review with them the best practice in, are you paying your copay today by cash or check? Not, you know you have a copay, you're going to pay it today, but are you paying your copay with cash or check today? Credit card. You know, you've got to get that front desk getting every penny. Sir, I see you have a balance left over from your previous visit. How are you taking care of that today? You've got to get those front desk people collecting that money from the patient, because it is a larger part of our income than it ever has been before.
And it's hard to do. We all know that's a hard one.
It is, but I have some really good friends and associates in the business world here that are excellent at giving talks to your front desk if you need it on that stuff too. So if they're hesitant to ask that patient for what they owe, then let me know and we can help with that a little
I see
bit
a great future webinar topic, Kathy. So we may have to cut that.
I think you're right. All right, so we've gotten our people ready.
Yep.
We've got our tools in place, and we have some sort of financial plan, we hope, right?
Yes. Yeah.
What comes next?
Well, I think cut over. October 1st, is this all over? I don't think so. It's just starting.
You know, I was a project manager for years and years, and people always say plans. What's this detailed plan thing? It's a list of things you don't want to forget to do in the moment, right? So for September 29th, the 30th, October the 1st, we need to have some things we know we're going to do. For example, for one of my practices, we have to make sure before they leave on the 30th, every physician has updated their documentation on all the visits through that day. We can't have any in the wait queue. We can't have any in the waiting room anymore. We got to get them through the system with their diagnosis complete. Otherwise, when we flip the switch tonight, because there's only codes in one mode, ICD-9 or 10, not both, we've got to have everybody the next day coding ICD-10.
Yeah.
Right.
I know our team here, we are on call and we may be sleeping here on the day of.
I think most of us in the billing world will be too.
Yeah.
The other thing I think you have to think about here is that on October the 1st, part of your team's going to be sending out the claims maybe in ICD-9, but your floor is going to be working on ICD-10 with the patients that are active. I know a lot of the EMRs I've been looking at did not automatically convert their problem list for patients to ICD-10 in the transition. You have to do that. So on the day before October the 1st, you want to have somebody going through those patients and making sure their problem lists have been updated to ICD-10 so the next day goes better. Right? You can't wait. That's a detail that needs to be written down. Those patients you already have on the books for October the 1st and 2nd, have you looked at their problem list? Do you know how to quickly convert them to ICD-10? How are you going to get it done? Right? Configuring any system settings. Most of our systems are not going to have a hard-coded October 1st flip it, right? For you. You've got to go in and make a setting change. Who's going to do that? When? What time? How are we going to know it's done? Right? If you have the ability to get some extra support in your office for the October 1st and 2nd, you need to get that worked into the personnel schedule now. What I mean is if some people are off on Mondays and others are off on Tuesdays, or everybody's not 5 days a week, perhaps you can schedule those people to be in the office on the 1st and 2nd, probably the 30th, the 1st and the 2nd. Get as many people as you can to help get through the process. So look at your scheduling. And you may want to reduce the number of appointments on the 1st and 2nd. I always hesitate to say lighten the load because I know it has a direct impact on revenue. But we've got to be able to get these claims out on the first and second. We've got to see the patients and get them recorded appropriately. So you may have to look at giving each provider a little bit more time to get caught up, maybe a slightly longer lunch break or one or two less appointments somewhere during the day.
Right. Okay,
You need
Kathy, I'm sorry, I don't want to push you along, but we're starting to run short on time.
Okay,
So
this is our
let's,
last slide,
oh,
I think. So
yeah.
track and publish your task status as needed. Let everybody in the office know where you are on the critical paths and begin tracking that AR. By that I mean if you don't think I'm going to be in here on Sunday night looking to see if Georgia Medicaid paid my Thursday and Friday claims, you'd be wrong because I'll be here. You know, you got to track all the way through probably the end of November. How
Yes.
are my payments coming through? Are my denials going up? And as soon as you recognize an issue, you need to start a backup plan. You need to execute your backup plan to get those done. Whew, that was a lot, but we got through it.
Great, great advice. I'm trying, let's see, if anybody has questions out there, we have a few minutes left to take those. And I know, Kathy, I had some questions earlier. Um, one was what exactly can you do for people and how to contact you? And we'll have your email coming up, but that people want to know how you, Kathy, can help them. Yeah.
Well, I do a lot of these talks. I've done a lot of lunch and learns in the Atlanta area for sure over the last 2 years. But what really Dyson Consulting will do with you, if you are not sure where you are in this process, if you want us to look at it, we'll do a phone consult with you and find out what's going on with you and try to help you find the best solutions. It might involve us coming in and working with you. It might be just helping you get to the right point, right? Go do this, call me back. Go do that, call me back, you know, that kind of thing. So that's really what we do. We work with all of our customers. What we have told everyone who has asked us for help is the people we're going to spend our focused time with in October are going to be those who have already spent time with us preparing because we can help them the easiest.
Mm-hmm.
The folks who on October the 1st and 2nd wake up and say, oh my gosh,
That's the
then
next
it's going to
question.
be a much bigger job to help them. And so, you know, I don't know how much time we're going to have. I've tried to build a
Yeah.
little bit of extra room into my staff to take care of that, but I don't know. So what I would encourage you is if you think you want a fallback position here, you need to contact us quickly so we can get you on our list and know what you've done, know where you are in the process, so we know how best to step in and help you. And sometimes Dyson's not the best person to help you depending on what your specialty is, but we may know someone
Right.
else in the billing
Right.
industry that can help. And PracticeAdmin has quite a few billing services with a lot of different specialties too. They can help us find the right fit to help you through this.
Let's see, I've got a question here. Okay. Oh boy. Thank you. Okay. Do you offer webinars on the sequencing of these codes?
On the sequencing of the codes, is he talking about
Let's see.
initial?
He went to a boot camp where they indicated the importance of sequencing and guidelines for the different chapters in ICD-10.
Oh, all right. So I
Okay.
think he might be talking about sequencing as in what's my primary versus secondary diagnoses, maybe what he's talking about there. If that's the case, I do not have a webinar specifically on that. If that's something you think we would be helpful, Tamara, I am more than happy to work with you and other professionals to put that together. Sure.
Right. So again, I would tell this person they may want to contact you directly
Okay.
at this point to get more clarification on that.
Yeah, and honestly, your sequencing, let me just state, sequencing of diagnoses has not changed from 9 to 10. It's not a difference. Perhaps a lot of people are now becoming more aware of the fact that if you don't put the most critical diagnoses at the top, especially if you're doing hospital coding, okay, you may not get the largest reimbursement. It's very
Right.
important to get the most complex one for hospital coding so that you get the right reimbursement. It does drive that a lot. And even with us too, and it drives your medical decision-making ratings for your levels.
Okay, and I'm hearing back from our customers. The report is diagnosis analysis, primary diagnoses. Thank you.
Yes, that's the one.
That's the
Thank
one.
you. Thank you,
Great
whoever.
customers. Yeah, I love that.
But yeah, just run that report for the last year if you want, or 6 months, whatever works for you. And then I just export it straight into Excel
Okay.
and delete all those header rows and sort that data based on the period total count,
Mm-hmm.
largest to smallest and drag the first 50 or 100 off. Now, if you're a pediatric office, I would encourage you to go through immediately and whack out the vaccine codes. There's only one
Yeah,
vaccine code for all of them now. One
great
diagnosis code for all the
suggestion.
vaccine CPTs. Yeah.
Yeah. So very quickly, I want to remind people this is Kathy Dyson. Oops, I got another question. And here's her email if you want to reach out to her directly. Okay, we're good. And this, I want to remind you again, this webinar has been recorded and it will be available online probably by the end of today on our website. And also, if you want just the PowerPoint itself, you can send me an email to marketing@practiceadmin.com and I can send you this presentation. We also have lots of great links and more information on our ICD-10 resources page. And I want to remind you to register for our next week webinar featuring Catherine Huddle from Savacity on Is Your EHR an ICD-10 roadblock? If you have questions about your EHR and if they're helping you or not. So again, you need to go to our website at this link here on the webinars page to register for that webinar, and we have 2 others after that. So welcome to register for all of them, and if you have any questions, again, you can contact us here at PracticeAdmin at marketing@practiceadmin.com or give us a call at our phone number down here. Also, if you'd like a demo of PracticeAdmin, give us a call and we can set that up. I will be following up with a link to this webinar with an email to all of our customers after this, as well as additional information, tools, and tricks for ICD-10. Kathy, thank you for joining us today. Great information. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. In 21 days, and we're there.
Yes. Okay.
Good luck.
All right.
Bye.
Have a good day, Kathy. Bye.